Alexander Mattison and Andrew Booth are hurt. There are surprise standouts. We know more about the depth chart. There's so much to talk about Minnesota Vikings training camp on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Luke Braun, and let's find some joy today. It's Minnesota Vikings training camp, so that shouldn't be too hard. You can find this show wherever you find your favorite podcasts, whether it is any audio listening app, or you can watch on YouTube or Amazon Fire and Roku. Just download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app on those smart TVs. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. And a special thanks to those of you who do listen to this show every single day, and those of you who watched the live stream that happened after practice. I will be doing that after every practice. I'll be trying to at least every practice that I can make it to. So with just like a quick Q&A, what happened, brief thoughts, things that are in my head right before I go drive, and then it'll be a while before I record and stuff, so it's like a fresh perspective. Go check that out. It's on the Locked On Vikings YouTube. It's very unofficial. We're just popping in. I'm like sitting in my car answering questions, just chilling. So at Minnesota Vikings training camp, I finally managed to get there and answer some of the questions that I have been asking. So first off, we got to go over some of the injury stuffs. There's depth chart questions. I was wondering, what's really the safety rotation, what's going on there. I think I have a sense for it. Cornerback stuff, wide receiver stuff, and all of that. And there were a couple of players that really caught my eye that I wasn't really thinking about at all. So that's going to be at the end of the show. But first, injury stuff. Okay, so you probably saw Andrew Booth walked off with a trainer at some point. I didn't see anything about that, so I don't really know anything more than anybody who has Twitter can know about that. So I'll have to table that one for now, but I did see Trishton Jackson and Alexander Mattison. So Trishton Jackson went down. He was laying out for a go ball. It wasn't like a huge stretch of a catch or anything. He just kind of came down on it funny. And then he was grabbing at his leg. They were working on his lower leg. It looked like they were like massaging it. So I'm going to guess that that's a soft tissue injury. And hopefully that needs better timeline than if they were. It did bring out the cart for him, though, so that's something to be concerned with. And then there's Alexander Mattison. Probably not as concerning of an injury, but the kind of thing where, we're not going to see him for the rest of camp now. He caught a check down in a team drill, an 11-on-11 drill, and then ran up the sideline. And as the play ended, they don't get tackled, so he was just kind of losing speed and just coming to a stop, and he just stepped funny. Immediately grabbed his hamstring and started limping. So that looks like a hammy to me. If it's a pulled hammy, that's the kind of thing that's not a season-ending injury or anything like that. That's a questionable for week 1 kind of injury. But regardless of how bad it is, it's the kind of thing that can come back if you push it. So I'm going to guess we don't. If we see Alexander Mattison even sniff the field at any point before week 1, that's phenomenal news, because that's the kind of injury you just have no reason to play games with. So we'll see what goes on there. But one of the things that I was really looking for is, okay, is all this Josh Oliver stuff that I've been talking about real? And guess what? It is. I've been talking on this show a ton for my everydayers now. But if you're not an everydayer, that's okay. My everydayers have all been listening to me talk about Josh Oliver in the run game and CJ Ham in the run game, and how that to me implies that they are going to steal a bunch of Kyle Shanahan stuff, basically. Use a lot more lead blocking and a lot more motions to get to that lead blocking. And guess what? I saw the running backs drilling today. They were drilling ways to get to force and to get to like weak or Mike, which is basically just a whole bunch of different versions of outside zone with a fullback, and that word tells the fullback which guy to block. Mostly it's force, which is the fullback going up the C gap. Usually that's on the weak side, I think. And then if it's on the strong side, that becomes Zorro, or that might be 2 tight ends. I got to look at it again. But either way, fullback to the outside with or without a tight end there. It was just the running backs drilling that with no O-line. I couldn't get a great look at the O-line or the D-line, so if you're wondering about takes on that, I'm going to have to get back to you. I spent most of my time watching the wide receivers and the corners and the one-on-ones and all that, but watching the Vikings practice that fullback stuff kind of confirms to me that what I've been guessing is correct, and that's pretty cool, because what that is ultimately going to mean, and a question I get all the time is can we ever expect the O-line to improve when it's the same group of people? They will be in more double teams. That's the whole point of that, is to not get your offensive linemen singled up on, Fletcher Cox's and Aaron Donald's. Chris Jones's, if you want, guys on the Chiefs. Or isn't he like holding out or something like that? I saw him in a headline, but I don't remember. Anyways, yeah, they're trying to get, no one-on-ones with Ed Ingram on that guy, right? Or Garrett Bradbury on that guy. And the defense is trying to kind of create those one-on-ones, much in the same way that an offensive scheme will try to get one-on-ones with their wide receivers. And that was kind of the other major takeaway. People were asking, I wanted to see these Flores blitzes. What's with this intensity and all that stuff? Man, this defense has this offense in hell. I don't know what to tell you. Like, the offense is supposed to be the more complete unit. They are very discombobulated by these blitzes. And I'm curious to see as I watch other practices, if that continues. Maybe it was just today. There's a lot of stuff that feels like, did I just catch them on a particular day that was like this, or is it really like this? And so if I see some of the same stuff, that's one of those things that I'm looking for. That could be a really interesting insight. That's surprising, is maybe the defense is outplaying its level of pedigree. I'll talk about depth chart in a little bit, but they are using about half and half nickel and big nickel, which is, I think, a really cool way to mix things up. So when they're in true nickel, that's their 3 corners and 2 safeties. And the way that those blitzes manifest is going to be a lot different than when they're in big nickel with 3 safeties and 2 corners. And then 2 linebackers, 4 D-line. That has the latter is where some of the cooler blitzes have come in, or had come in at least today. But they've got plenty, there's a lot of times where they just like send 7, they overload something. Harrison Smith got a bunch of sacks in the team drills, and the Vikings were really struggling to pick that up. Cousins was checking down a lot, Hopefully that is the way that Flores can turn a defensive roster with lots and lots of holes in it into a unit that actually accomplishes something. And if they can do that, then the offense doesn't need to be perfect. They don't need to score 35 a game if you're not giving up 35 a game. You know what I mean? I do want to talk about the depth chart in particular, those nickel packages, Lewis Seen, and how some of the updates that we've seen to some of the situations that I've at least heard about, but wanted to check in on. So let's do all that checking in on. But first, why don't you go get yourself a Gramblin? You can go to FanDuel.com and you can gamble on all kinds of Minnesota Vikings futures, like how many wins they're going to have, Justin Jefferson over under 1,400 yards, that kind of thing, which, by the way, insane number if you look at what he's done previously, and Justin Jefferson in camp looks just as, if not even more, unguardable as always. I mean, he's ridiculous. Byron Murphy's the only one that's even close to keeping up with him at all ever. But if you want to go bet on the MLB on FanDuel, you can get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets, up to $200 worth of that. So like if you bet $20 on the Twins to get more than 3 runs in their next game, you can get up to $200 in bonus bets just for making that $20 bet tenfold. And it doesn't matter if the Twins get 3 runs or not. You get that $200 in bonus bets you can use on whatever. That is by going, if you sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. The app is safe, secure, super easy to use. They have all kinds of bets for MLB, futures for the NFL, also, NBA and NHL, all of that stuff. And when you win, you get paid out instantly. So go to FanDuel.com/lockedon, get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Moving on with this episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast. Once again, thank you so much to those of you who are my everydayers who listen to this show every single day. Tomorrow, we are going to finish up the Everyman series. We have 3 players left, and I'm going to give you that since there's no practice on Wednesday, so we won't have a practice to talk about. But I do want to talk a little bit about some of the depth chart stuff, in particular on the defense, the things that kind of stood out to me. So let's, I guess, start with the Lewis Cine thing. So Lewis Cine is very much with the twos. That's not news. We knew that. Sam Ekstrom has been saying that. But what I kind of seen is Harrison Smith. Cine will come in when they give Smith a rep off, because they'll give Harrison Smith just kind of old guy reps. But then Cine comes in and it's Bynum, Cine, and Metellus, which of course, right? It's not going to be Theo Jackson. But the way that they've rotated Cam Bynum and Metellus with each other was interesting. Metellus was playing high safety all day, and Cam Bynum was the one in the box doing blitzes, coming off the edge, doing interesting stuff. So that kind of implies that there's going to be that rotation. And what Cine was doing with the twos, to me, he was, I think, one of the most interesting players to watch on the twos, and certainly one of the most disruptive and involved players on the twos. I think he's excelling among the twos. That is, he hasn't played in such a way that he doesn't look like he belong, like that is what you want to see when someone's with the twos and you want to see him with the ones. You have to look like, oh man, they're with the wrong group. And we're not there quite with Lewis Cine, but I got a bunch of questions in the live stream. Like, should we be worried about Cine? Is he bad? Like, is this a bust? And I honestly, someone's got to play with the twos, man. I think there's just 4 good safeties, and that's that. That's one of them has got to be fourth. But I think, like, if you sustain 2 injuries, let's say, Bynum and Harrison Smith go down and Metellus and Cine are your safeties, I don't feel bad about that. Someone's got to play with the twos. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're a backup quality player. And I think Cine does stand out among that group, just not to the degree that, hey, maybe we should consider benching, Metellus or Bynum from their jobs, who those guys are also playing very well. I think the group's just deep, and if you want to find a way to be mad about that because of draft pedigree, that's on you, but you got to work to do it, and that's a purposeful thing you got to be doing. I think I'm pretty happy with the safety room. Maybe if you wanted to think about it this way, Bynum and Metellus are outplaying their draft stock quite a bit. Cine is not playing up to his draft stock, but I think he's closer to his than Bynum and Metellus are to theirs. Does that make sense? But elsewhere in the secondary, with the ones, the corners, Caleb Evans and Byron Murphy on the outside, Mekhi Blackman inside. Mekhi Blackman is just taking a starting job. That's just happened. Joanne, I think he did it on Monday, like when the pads came on, I think he did it. Joanne Williams was not playing with the ones anymore, and he is now just outside corner with the twos. Andrew Booth was the other outside corner. He went down. Jalen Williams took over, which is very interesting. He started playing in the slot, and then Mekhi Blackman also played with the twos on the outside. So they've got Blackman doing the inside-outside thing. They're just playing him on 2 different teams, but he's playing first-team slot corner right now when they're in their normal nickel package, and then he'll come off, and Metellus will come in when they go into their big nickel. So there's a draft pick for you that's doing something. I guess I should also kind of go over some of the other rookies. Jordan Addison looks like I thought. I think it looks. I didn't see. I'm not surprised by his performance, which, if you were not watching me during draft season, is a very good news. I was very high on that pick, and he looks like what I thought we were getting. He's very quick and sudden. The routes are really cool. He's able to get a lot of separation, especially when he's going up against the likes of Joanne Williams or Mekhi Blackman, or he's got a couple of really fun reps against Caleb Evans. In like one-on-one situations, he can track the ball, high point it, and kind of do the ball in the air part of the game that so often gets overlooked. That box is checked. There were a couple of times, it's like 75% of his reps are great, and then there are a couple of them that are like, there's stuff to be learned there. So I wouldn't be surprised if KJ Osborne is consistently listed above him, but fret not, he'll get plenty of run. Health notwithstanding and all that. So that's looking fine. Mekhi Blackmon is, for a third round pick coming in and getting a rotational role right away, that's probably beating expectations. And then you got guys like Jay Ward and Jaquelin Roy. Jay Ward's with the 2s and he looks fine. I didn't really notice him one way or another, so I'll have to get back to you another time when I have a better when I get a better eye on him. Jaquelin Roy also playing with the 2s, and then you go all the way to Jaren Hall and Dwayne McBride. Those all look fine as well. Dwayne McBride got a little bit more, I guess, in terms of depth chart movement. We should also talk about Kene Nwangwu was out, and then Alex. I don't know what the deal was with Kene Nwangwu, who wasn't there or whatever. But so you got a lot of Ty Chandler run and a lot of Dwayne McBride run, and I gotta tell you, maybe I'm just biased because it's my draft take, but Dwayne McBride looks pretty good, man. I don't know. He's with the 3s. I get it. It's not like crazy strength of competition. I'm not really looking at him in one-on-one situations against UDFAs and saying, ooh, look, he won. But it's more, I just like how quickly he hits holes. He just runs through them fast, and that's nice. And he's very acceleration-y, and the cuts in, well, like when he's trying to make a guy miss, you can see it's really hard to do that. And I'm not just looking at, CJ Colden missed a tackle on him. It's that he set it up very well in a way that I think would translate to stiffer competition as well. So I want to see him get an opportunity for real. I think I could get there. He's not getting those opportunities. Like, he's with the 3rd team right now. That's not his thing. But if Mattison is out, he will get those opportunities with the 2s. If Chandler and Nwangwu, if Nwangwu's out for one, but even if Nwangwu's in, I think he's going to rotate with Chandler again, and they'll just do that on the 1st team, which will be fascinating in its own right. But I think Dwayne McBride has something worth given. It'll be fun in the preseason, I think. I think that's all of the major depth chart movement that I noticed from where I was standing. Couldn't really see the O-line and the D-line. They didn't have any Marcus Davenport in teams, so it was DJ Wonnum and Patrick Jones. Patrick Jones did very well with the 1st team defense, by the way. He had a nice time. And then you still have Nick Mullins with the 2s, Jaren Hall with the 3s. Jaren Hall, he looks fine. I love his arm. I really like the passes that he throws. They're very on-time accurate and coming in from the proper trajectory, especially the harder throws. And I think that will ultimately serve him well. I think both he and Nick Mullins right now are doing a good job of just sort of operating the offense. Nothing is a real wowza play. Kirk Cousins will have a couple of those throws where you're like, whoa, what a dot. Nick Mullins did have one total dot to a guy we'll talk about in a second. So I guess I'll give that Nick Mullins is outplaying Jaren Hall by a little bit right now. But I compare this to the way I felt last year this time when I was watching Mond and Mannion and my face was in my hands. I was just going, oh my God, I don't think you could put either of these guys on the team. I think they're going to have to find a new quarterback. Lo and behold, they go and trade for Nick Mullins. We live in a much better world. This is, count your stars, because this is way better. I do have a couple of players that really stuck out to me as standouts that I really didn't think I'd be talking about in that regard at all. And I have to point them out, and I have to draw your attention to them so that next time the Vikings practice, if you're watching, if you get to go to camp, go to camp. But if you are just watching Twitter or whatever, watch for their names, because if they have string together a lot of days like the day they just had, they might actually end up making way more noise than you ever thought. So moving right along with this Locked On Vikings podcast. Surprise standouts. Okay, I got one on offense, one on defense. If you listen to the live stream, you already know. If you follow me on Twitter, you already know the answers here. But I'll start with the offensive one. Brandon Powell. Who's cooking, man? Very, very sudden out of cuts. Very explosive out of his cut. And that is something that I think is a differentiating factor. So when I went into this, we kind of acknowledge, okay, Brandon Powell versus Jalen Reagor, one goes home, right? And I would have even added Trishton Jackson to that and say make it a keep two kind of deal. Or just like keep one of three. You've got Naylor, who is out still, but They don't anticipate him being out long. At least that's what they've told us. We'll see how it actually goes, right? But you've got the top three: Addison, Jefferson, Osborne, and then Naylor. There's your four. We've got one probably wide receiver spot left and a second one if you really, really want it. Divide that however you want amongst Jalen Reagor, Brandon Powell, and Trishton Jackson. Trishton Jackson gets hurt. That's going to hurt him a lot. That really sucks for a guy who's always on the roster bubble. You need every single opportunity, every single rep you can get. And it looked like he was hurt bad. He was in a lot of pain. So we'll see what his timeline is if he's back, the next couple of days. Sometimes that stuff can hurt really, really bad, but heal a little faster. So I'm hoping for that. But I digress. Brandon Powell, first off, he was consistently beating Byron Murphy. The only other person on the team to do that was Justin Jefferson. That was crazy to watch him explode out of a cut. Now, sometimes it was a leverage thing. They'll run a wide receiver one-on-one with the D-back. And what you got to understand is there's a clip that I actually retweeted even that shows one of the routes that I'm talking about. But Byron Murphy has outside leverage, and this route cuts to the inside. So if you're a corner in that spot, short of holding, there's nothing you can do. You either hold or teleport. You can't do it. So I don't want to give him all the credit in the world for doing that, but the amount of separation that he gets is really nice because of how quickly he bursts out of that cut. And again, nothing the corner can do about that. You can do that against the number one corner on a team. You can do that against the number one corner in the league if they're in that leverage against you. And they're in that leverage because that's just what the drill was, because that's what the coverage call would be, right? You just are going to lose to that. And usually the coverage call has somebody else picking up the route when you're in that kind of leverage. So it's doesn't translate perfectly, but you can see the explosiveness. You can see him getting in and out of cuts quickly and then accelerating very fast and getting up to his top speed very fast. And then there were just a bunch of baller plays, contested catches in traffic, difficult catches over the top, getting separation against cornerbacks on the second team. Just a lot of really exciting stuff every single time. Whoa, who made that play? And he turns around. And there were times when I thought the 19 was an 18. I was like, oh, that's JJ. Wait, that's not JJ. And going up against Byron Murphy, I think didn't help me there too. It took me a second. That, it might be messing with my brain a little bit, but I don't know, man. He looked good enough and did stuff that I was like, yeah, that looks like a Justin Jefferson rep. I don't know. That should probably tell you all you need to know about that. And then the other guy that really stood out to me was Tay Gowan, the cornerback, I think most recently of the Eagles. He's one of the last everyman guys that we're going to do tomorrow. But I first noticed him on the special teams drills. Camp always starts with some special team stuff. A lot of people will ignore that or not really show up for it. I think it's really worth watching because it will show you who the surprise makes will be, who your Brandon Dillons are on a given team. If you remember him kind of sneaking onto the roster a while ago when we didn't expect him to. But he's the Dan Chisenas of the world for sure. And they did punt gunner drills, and Tay Gowan won, I think, every single one of them really decisively. And then they did a kickoff drill where they had a little pole in the middle, and it was just a matter of get by your blocker and tackle him. And I forget who he was going against. I don't think I could tell who he was going against because the jersey was rolled up. So I can't tell you that. But whoever it was, he had him totally stopped up. Dude didn't get 5 yards down the field. He was in the blocking role. That was how the day started. And then he won a couple of wide receiver one-on-ones. And I mean, he's with the third team, so he's beaten on Thayer Thomas and Garrett Mogg, who had a really bad day. If you're interested in deep roster news, Garrett Mogg, UND alum, had a couple of drops. He slipped over once. Jalen Reagor slipped once. I think Jalen Reagor also kind of is a guy that had a bad day just because, I mean, he did fine, but because of the day Brandon Powell had, that's a bad day for him. But won a couple of one-on-ones and had a couple of moments in the 7-on-7 world where he was just all over a guy, very physical coverage, but in a way that wouldn't draw a penalty, and being able to get in there and swat the ball away. I don't know. With both of these guys, it might just be a really good day. And that's something that with camp, we need to be really careful not to overthink. Especially when you aren't able to get there, right? And you're just going off of tweets. And this is something that I was talking to Sam Ekstrom about on the Minnesota football party before I went to the practice, where it's like, I can only really see, like, that's probably all you've heard about from Tay Gowan this whole time, right? Like, I don't think anybody else is on the Tay Gowan beat. So if he had 3 horrible days before this, and now he's strung together one great one, that great one doesn't matter nearly as much because you had 3 horrible ones. So it's about, can you keep that up? I don't care if you peak in a random practice on a hot day in August. I care if you string together a week's worth of those, and hey, maybe you're actually just like way better than we thought, and that rocks. It's been, look, this is a very homery show today. I'm excited. It's training camp. Sue me. But if you want some negativity, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like guys that didn't look as good. It's not worth it. I don't know. It was fine. Caleb Evans took some L's, I guess, but nothing I'm like overly concerned about. I mean, the negativity is injuries, right? And it'll be interesting to see what happens in that running back room with Alexander Mattison, unless it was just a super minor thing and it's just, it's a cramp. He did pass, I want to say, like Sam Ekstrom on his way into the trainer and said, I'll be fine. So I am not worried about him long-term at all, but I feel like it's the kind of thing where you go, okay, well, we're just going to be abundantly cautious with you and you're done for camp. You know how to run zone, right? You've only been doing it for like 8 years of your life. You'll be fine. But without him in the fold, and I don't know what's up with Kenny Nwangwu, then you get a lot of this D-Wade McBride exposure, and you get to really see what he'll be able to do. I'm really excited to see what he'll ultimately be able to do. And I'm just excited to see. So I guess if you're looking for things, right, help me keep an eye out for things. If you see stuff about, wow, these blitzes are getting guys again, okay, those blitzes are real, right? And I didn't just show up on the day where they unleashed the coolest blitzes and the offense couldn't figure them out yet. If you hear more about Brandon Powell, if you hear more about Tay Gowan, those are the 3 things, Brandon Powell, Tay Gowan, and the blitzes, that I want to look and say, okay, are these sustained successes, or did I just show up on the day that happened? But if they are sustained successes, like, just think about how much that changes. What if Tay Gowan suddenly is having a Duke Shelley style renaissance and becomes a starting quality corner, right? I don't know if like that's we're a long way away from that. But the first step when you have a guy on the 3s that's secretly a starting quality player is for him to look like he shouldn't be playing with the 3s. And I would say he looked like he shouldn't be playing with the 3s. He's got to keep up that and say, man, every single day, Tay Gowan shows up, plays with the 3s, and looks like he should not be with the 3s. All right, fine, we'll put him with the 2s. And then you got to, sustain a good week with that. And it takes a long time to climb up to that. But I don't know. If you'll allow yourself to daydream just for 1 minute, oh man, what if he actually was a good corner? And whatever happened earlier in his career was just a fluke. There's something really cool to imagine there. And I think it's okay to let your mind drift off a little bit sometimes. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Since there's no practice, we'll do the Everyman. We'll wrap up the Everyman series, and then we'll wrap up the week with a recap of the night practice on Thursday. Very excited for that. So I will see you all for that. And as always, Skol.